Well, good morning. Coming to you from the little field next to my father's house, which you can see in the picture there. I've had my Gandhi moment. I woke up this morning and it's the coldest day of the year so far, and I was able to walk around in a t-shirt, and I had this recognition that the state of mind that I found myself in Tilba with the same idea, because you're always looking at ideas, with the same idea presented of being a body and being cold, has again, what would you call it, transformed. So always a happy realization when you become the witness to something shifting in your consciousness, even if it is only something very small like that. But I wanted to do a video today just with regards to a comment that somebody made on one of my other videos about feeling stuck and feeling lethargic with their efforts in doing the workbook lessons and things like that. And it's a very basic and a very common malady that as you go through your process, your ego will always attempt to corrupt your own efforts, which is why when you're doing the workbook lessons, you have every day something, and in the first half of the workbook lessons that are designed to undo the way you see things now, you have something every day that's always dislodging you. All right, so those lessons and the text, there's no real accompaniment of the text to the lessons. There's 30 odd chapters in the text, so if you were to read probably a third of a chapter with a lesson, you'd probably be keeping pace if you had that sort of a mindset to want to do that. But for me, I just tended to read a whole chunk of the text, no specific amount intended when I began, just until I felt like I'd read enough. And the workbook lessons I did very dogmatically, one a day for the whole year. And of course I did that for 2 years running. The first year I realised I wasn't really sincere and didn't have a lot of integrity with the lessons. But one of the things in the workbook, because they're designed to keep you dislodged every day and your ego's always against you trying to recover, because the journey into fear is not something we naturally jump up in the morning and go, yahoo, that's what I'm doing today. Fear tends to be something that shows up in our lives incrementally in relationships and situations that are out of our control. And of course, they're not really out of our control. It's just the universe presenting us with, or God mind presenting us with the opportunity to look again at the decision that we made to be separate. And of course, you don't realise you made that decision when you first start out. You have to have that moment of realising that as you go along. But the fear that you encounter during the day seems to be out of your control. Whereas when you're doing the workbook lessons, with the realisation that, hang on, I'm undertaking a journey into fear, I should then expect to find the fearful premise of my thinking as I go along with it. And if you don't, like, a lot of those lessons are very well structured. I mean, they're Jesus structured. They're perfectly structured. But if you don't find fear, if you're not, and that's sort of towards a little bit further into the first half of the workbook lessons, but if you don't find fear as you're going along, I would have no hesitation in telling you that you're not really putting your heart and soul into doing the lessons. But one of the things that happens is you'll find when you're doing the lessons that one or two of them will stick out for you as being really beneficial. All right, so for me it was lesson 10, and lesson 1, nothing I see means anything. I mean, you can't go past that. Nothing I see means anything. the idea of learning in the world is that as you progress in learning, you seem to accumulate a knowledge. The reverse is the way it is for the universal curriculum. The more you progress, the less you should know. Now, the ego always likes to think, oh, I know a lot of spiritual stuff now. I've read this whole Course in Miracles, and yes, I know what it says. And well, that's really kind of the opposite of what it's saying. You should get to the end of it and have absolutely no clue. Right? And I love it's in one of the lessons, I think it's in the 260s. And now come with wholly empty hands unto your God. You know, let your mind be washed away of all thoughts from the past and the future, and all thoughts of everything that you think you know what it is and all that sort of thing, and come with wholly empty hands unto your God. And if you're doing the workbook lessons properly and reading the course properly, you're actually unlearning. The whole thing is a great unlearning and a reminding or a prompting of what it is that you actually already know somewhere in your mind. Okay, so, but the big trick with all of this, it's not really a trick, it's Jesus talks about it as a secret. The big secret of salvation that he talks about in the course is that you're doing this to yourself. And of course, when you come into the world, you seem to be purposeless. You seem to have no purpose, and you look around, why am I here? What's it all about? And you don't realize that actually, yes, you already have a purpose running in the background. It's like a program. You have this purpose, and it's called denial. And there's this whole amnesia where you can't remember that. Otherwise, you could make a choice right at the beginning of your physical experience not to participate in that purpose and void the efficacy of what it is that occurs to you as you become the witness to your own transformation. I hope that makes sense. So you come into the world completely ignorant of your purpose, and then you discover one. You pick up A Course in Miracles. Oh, healing is my purpose. Right? Forgiveness is my purpose. It's all the same thing. Right? Healing, forgiveness, atonement, that's my purpose. But you have to realize and take it on board when Jesus says this course will be believed in its entirety or not at all. And then when he says that your original purpose is denial, you have to kind of stop with that for a second and allow for that to sort of sink in, allow for that to kind of dawn on you, where you realize that I made this choice. I am doing this to myself. Otherwise, there's going to be this kind of soft looking for a blame. You know, there's going to be this, and the ego won't ever allow you to focus on it particularly. But it will always try to keep you distracted. But you'll be looking for someone to blame. Oh, I blame my parents for bringing me here or having me, and why did they even bother to have me? And they didn't ask my permission. All of that sort of thing. Suggesting, of course, in that even that there was a you somewhere else before that could have been asked for permission. So, looking at the idea then of some of those lessons in the workbook being continually helpful to you, right? So you're up to lesson, whatever it is, lesson 30, let's say, or lesson 40, but you remember that lesson 10 or whatever lesson it was for you had a particularly advantageous occurrence in doing it properly. You can then go back and repeat that lesson in a moment of turmoil, in a moment of conflict. So for me, it was always lesson 10. I would be, let's say, just going through whatever my day was presenting, and you never know what's occurring, but all of a sudden something comes along and rocks the boat, and your mind is sent into a flurry of thoughts and searching for something to get you out of that thoughts, Hopefully, if you're advanced enough with your spiritual work, you're no longer searching for drugs or alcohol. You're searching for a concept or an idea to bring you back to sanity. And that's nice when you realize that about yourself as well. But for me, it was always lesson 10. I'd be like, oh man, I need to do lesson 10. So I'd sit down. My thought about this does not mean anything. My thought about that does not mean anything, and then this thought will help to release me from everything I now believe. And I would do that and repeat that for about 3 or 4 minutes and bring my mind back to a state of perfect peace, back to peace again, because the retraining of the mind is retraining the mind to value peace above all else. And I remember I was riding my motorcycle to work one morning. This was a particularly nasty one. And I had some kind of very deep baritone droning. It's the only way I can put it. It was like a voice, but without being able to make out any intelligible kind of language about it. But there was this droning, almost like a mantra, like blum blum, something ridiculous. I didn't recognize it. I didn't identify it, but it was booming in my consciousness. It was something there, and it was dragging me down. This has only happened once, I think, but it was dragging me down into a very deep and uncomfortable place. And I'm riding along at 100 kilometers an hour, so I immediately went into a little bit of panic about it, like what's going on here. And I realized the downward density of this, whatever it was that was occurring. I realized that I was being drawn into a very slow and deep vibratory kind of field. And my first reaction really was, okay, just go with this, just allow this to happen. And then I realized that I'm belting along at 100 kilometers an hour, and I didn't know what could happen. I didn't really want to have an out-of-body experience driving along the highway. So I started reciting over and over, mantra style, sort of as compensating against what was happening. I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm still as God created me, which is, I think in the lesson 260s or 300, somewhere there, where there's a little section where Jesus advises you to repeat one idea over and over to yourself. And that brought me out of that. And it hasn't happened again. Whether or not I have to go back and revisit that sort of episode, I don't know. I'm sure it'll show up if it's meant to. But the power of the mind, what you're looking at is always looking at the power of your own mind to be able to bring yourself out of chaos, out of drama, out of conflict and into peace. And it can look like anything. It can look like some crazy, deep, droning voice in your head, or something that sounds like a voice in your head. So never think that there's something going on that's not part of your transformation. If you're feeling despondent with your lessons, that's part of your transformation, right? Ego is always against you. Time is always against you. This is a full-on kind of journey, and once you open that can of worms, you can't put them you can't put them back in. So with that also, the lessons for the day each have a very specific little instruction to them, usually at the end, right? And the beginning of the workbook lessons in the book, there's a little preamble before you start the lessons in section, I think it's just called section 2, lessons, or the workbook or something. There's a little page there, it's a page or two preamble about how to do the lessons. Do one a day, don't do more than one a day, but if you feel comfortable, you can sit on one lesson for more than one day if it makes you feel better. Right, this is all about bringing your mind to peace, making you feel better. It's not about becoming some kind of guru or some kind of advanced spiritual disciple or anything like that. It's just very human, very basic, and it's simply just the undoing of what never was. So I hope that's helpful. For me, lesson 1, nothing I see means anything. I mean, I had... This is a funny one, right? So this is a little story. When I was at the Healing Centre in Byron Bay, out the back we had this giant fig tree, and there was picnic tables that had been put under the fig tree, and all the brothers would have lunch after Ted finished doing his thing and meditation was finished. You could queue up for lunch and go and get yourself a plate of some vegetarian something. It was always delicious. And go and sit out there, usually in quiet, in silence, but there'd always be those people that would want to talk and discuss, usually the newer students, trying to get their head around things. And one day there was a little ramp going down to the garden area, the tree. One day my mother hen Greta was walking in front of me with her plate, and two of the brothers were having a punch up in the well, I'll explain this because you probably got the same question running through your head right now that I had at the time, but they were having a bit of a punch up under the thing, and everybody was watching. It was just all happening. And I remember saying to Greta, I said, what does that mean? You know, like, and she goes, lesson van, she was Dutch. She said, lesson van, nothing I see means anything. And it just went boom, and that lesson hit me, you know, and I'd probably been there full time at about 8 months by then, and I'd probably heard nothing I see means anything about 1,000 times. But that moment was the moment that cemented it into my consciousness. Right? I actually had a practical connection, or an actual live connection, if you want to call it, live action. But it's funny, you think that if you attend a spiritual centre that everybody's there is calm and peaceful, and in the main they were. There was a couple of incidents though where there was a bit of physical hands-on, and you have to remember that you're in a place where you're taking a journey into fear. You're confronting your ego every day, and you're in a place where everyone's doing the same sort of thing. Everybody's allowing their ego nonsense to come up so they can see it and heal it. And everybody's at a various level of capacity, or what would you call it? Mastery of doing that healing work. And so you have, and these two particular brothers, they were novices, or very newbies we used to call them, new guys. And the new guys would always get a guide, so you'd have a guide for 12 months until you finished the workbook, and then you were kind of on your own. But it's just a funny seeming contradiction of the purpose of the place. It's not like a monastery where everybody sits in silence, and we had this purposefulness about it where you were always encouraged, if you had anger or anything coming up or whatever, you were always encouraged to go and see your guide. But of course, in the moment of being confronted with a lot of emotional upwelling, it's not always, especially for new guys at this, it's not always the first thought to pop into your head, oh, I've got anger going on, I better go and see my guide. Usually the first tendency, or the reactive tendency, is to want to lash out or react how you would normally have reacted before you came to the healing centre, because your mind is still so heavily loaded on the side of denial and the old way of thinking. And it takes, the course goes for 12 months, but it takes some period of years to accomplish a comprehensive enough transition that you really begin to feel the gains of the work you've been putting in. And Alana, who we were having a discussion, one of the brothers, that she came and spent several years at my house. She'd been in a very bad motorcycle accident. Life had turned her on its head and all sorts of stuff. And her closest friend brought her to me at, it was literally like midnight one night or something. They turned up on the door, and Alana ended up staying for, about 4 years, I think. but she had 2 broken legs from the motorcycle accident, and my driveway at Avatar was incredibly steep, like ridiculously steep. And I said to her, "You'll be running up and down that driveway in 12 months, you know." And I pretty much, I think she almost was, or she was. But very passionate woman, Alana. And but recently we were having a chat about things. I haven't seen her for quite a while, but we met up and we were having a chat. And she said, "You know what?" And I'm just trying to remember here, but she said something like, "You can't really tell people how it is that this is going to affect their lives, because it takes a good 10 years, you know." And in my experience of it, it would definitely have been a good 10 years before the conscious realization that there was no vestiges of my old life, particularly, that were left, that had any ability or any power over me to be able to affect my own state of mind. And she was of the same realization, you know. So even though the workbook goes for a year, and you'll see gains incrementally, you know, like the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. That's the rule with anything in life. But the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. You'll see gains almost immediately. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't see gains immediately if you're being miracle-minded about everything, right? And it's always going to be prayer as the medium of miracles. I think that's principle 7 in the miracles, I think it is. Prayer is the medium of miracles. And I always advise people to overlearn those principles, right? Just so you've got them in your mental toolbox. And it's like, prayer is the medium of miracles. I need a miracle. Okay, I need to pray. Father, I need a miracle. And then don't define what the miracle is. Don't put your 2 cents worth in, right? God knows what you want before you ask, and it's already accomplished on your behalf through the Holy Spirit's purpose in you anyway. We're just processing through this, revealing through this, witnessing through this, allowing of the Holy Spirit's purpose within us to actually become manifest in our experience, so that we can come to terms as gently as possible, I suppose, with the idea that we're just awakening from a dream and that there is no world. And that can be a big shock to the system. So I know I mentioned it recently in one of my videos, but I remember standing out on the road in front of the healing centre having a hissy fit with myself about that. And that was after enlightenment. That was after my enlightenment. It's like I didn't have the luxury of belief or not belief. It's like I couldn't deny what had happened. It's like the Titanic's going down and there's no room in the lifeboat for me. But until you actually have that moment, you'll still try to find a better position, a better deck chair on the Titanic. You know, you still think you have an option. The funny thing is, you don't really have an option. If you're listening to this video now, or watching this video now, it's a done deal. I'm telling you that the salvation's a real thing. You're living in the atonement, literally living in it, the time of atonement, 2,000 years since the resurrection. And the fruits of Jesus's demonstration of crucifixion and ascension are now spreading around the world in this thing called the Great Awakening, and we're participating together through this collaborative venture of making videos and doing what we can as our part, as what is called the celestial speed up within that. So for me, I think the speed up, or the idea of getting through this as quickly as possible, was something that I found very valuable, because I'd had the experience that the Father and the Son are one, that all things are one. God is a singularity. And there are many experiences you can have on the spiritual path at various levels for your own comprehension and for your own ability to manage them in your psyche. There's more I want to say about that, but there's a part in the course where Jesus says, with regards to enlightenment and having the experience of direct union with God, he says, if it happens, so be it. If it doesn't happen, so be it as well. That experience is so rare that it's not worth focusing on. It's not really worth putting too much focus on. It's better to keep that as your overall understanding of what it is you're about, but keep your goal as inner peace. Right, bring your mind to peace, because that's more advantageous to you now. And mind training is your greatest need now. So training your mind to be able to return itself to a state of peacefulness and to a heavenly state is more advantageous to you than let's say going and sitting in the desert, literally sitting in the desert for 40 days and nights, challenging your ego to its nth degree and pushing through that highest level of the conscious barrier to have an experience of direct union with God, which I can't tell you that that's how that exactly works. Because the last step is up to God. You could just find yourself laying face down in the desert and the birds picking at your bones. But I just use that analogy because it's biblical, and Jesus used it in describing his overall confrontation with the deceiver, with Satan, in his, I guess, recognized necessity to confront his own ego. Right? And you might say, well, how could Jesus have an ego? He was the Son of God. If you've got a body, you've got an ego. The body is the symbol of the ego, and you have to bring it into account. So yes, even Jesus had his moment of doubt and pain in the garden at Gethsemane. But he had enough wherewithal around him, with him, to defer his moment of doubt and pain and fear and everything to God. Right? If it be thy will, Father, then I will go through with this, but otherwise let this cup pass from me to somebody else more capable. It's funny, trying to imagine somebody else to take that cup. I mean, knowing what I know now, gladly, I would take it gladly. You know, being crucified to me now, at one time in my life, that would have been horrific. But now, knowing what I know, it would have been, I don't know what it would have been, but it would have been quick. Oh dear. Anyway, I love you. Thank you for the donations too, I've got to say that. Tyna and I are doing a test Zoom meeting tomorrow. I've only got hotspot at the moment at Dad's place. Dad has no internet, God bless him. If the hotspot thing doesn't work for Zoom with Tyna tomorrow in our test, I'm going to drive down the mountain to the Gold Coast and get a Wi-Fi dongle from one of the telco providers down there. So that should give me a permanent permanent connection. And then all you guys that have been writing in saying, how do we join the Zoom meetings? Thank you for your patience. It won't be long. But also Gregory's Zoom meetings, Gregory Sacra, S-A-C-R-A, if you look him up on Facebook. Tyna, if you're watching this video, maybe you can drop his link in the description down below as well. He does regular Zoom meetings also, a very beautiful Course in Miracles teacher, a very profound teacher for me during the early part of my transformation as well. But we're getting that organised. The books, we are so close to organising the new lot of books. We got the account verified with Google this morning, so Google can begin to pay us out the money that we've been collecting from you guys, or through advertising. Oh, that was something I wanted to say as well. Apparently, if you watch the ads all the way through, we get more money. Not, I know some of you guys just leave your phone on the kitchen table while you're doing whatever in the morning, and you listen to my videos because you've told me that. But apparently, if you let the ads run rather than fast forward them, or maybe you can skip the ads or something, instead of doing that, I get more money on here so we can get more books printed. But that's up to you. I'm not a fan of advertising either. But so books, Zoom, donations. I don't usually take any concern for all these things, but Tina's asked me to continually mention all of that, and I am genuinely grateful. I'm totally grateful. Anything to share these ideas. That's the other thing too. If you guys want to share, you know, like copy the link or whatever for these videos and share them with people that you think might get something out of them, that would be truly awesome. You can share them on your Facebook pages or Instagram. I'm not sure how to use Instagram, but that would be really good as well. Just remember, you're whole and perfect as God created you. You're the spirit and you're not the flesh. And I love you. God loves you unconditionally. And we're all in this sinking ship together, but we're getting out. Salvation is the life jacket, and it's being offered right here and now. All you got to do is say yes. Yes, Father. Yes, here I am. All right. Peace.